Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Wednesday lighting critique. We've got one movie and a handful of images to go through here. But off the top, I wanted to go through two questions that came up. Question number one was, how do you know how much to do in comp versus how much to do in lighting? And question number two was about neon lights. And the question was whether to use mesh lights or emission from the shader as neon. Both were excellent questions. In fact, let's do the neon one first from Aaron. So Francesco answered it perfectly well, and which is that mesh lights often have a tendency to be noisy and problematic. I do like to use emission, but again, depending on the render and the settings and what's going on in your scene, those could be problematically noisy as well. So generally I start with emission and see if I can get that to work. And if I have to use mesh lights, then I'll use those as well. But that's generally my setup there. In terms of the other question about lighting and comp, basically it's the biggest thing with it is just be patient with yourself. Understand that comes with time. That as you do more work, you'll start to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses and what you're able to do in comp and what you're able to do in lighting. And because it's not a one size fits all answer for everybody. Like, I feel pretty comfortable in both, so I will do things in both places. Some people feel that the 3D representations in the renderer can't be duplicated in the comp and therefore want to do everything there. There are people who are like, I don't understand why I'd wait for these long render times. Just give me some elements. I can make them look the way I want them to look in comp. I'll just do it that way. So no two artists are alike that way. So you just need to give yourself a little time and a little flexibility to understand where you lie on that spectrum and how much you want to do. The one advice that I would give for people is don't think of lighting and comp as step one and step two. What you want to think of them as a cycle, right? You light, you comp, you review, and you repeat. Don't think of it as like, I am in the lighting stage. Okay, lighting stage, check. Now it's time to comp. You go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And like in the comp, I'll try and make stuff look kind of cool and see what happens, you know? And if it doesn't work out, then I will go into the render and do it there. Like, and also sometimes it's just limited by your time. Like, you have to finish something by the end of the week, and that render is just not going to get done in time. So you do your best in your comp, and then you go forward from there. Okay. Enough jibber jabber. Let me get into some images. So let's go ahead and start at the end here. We're gonna. So Cleber, you're off to the side. You got added after I started, but I did want to get Yang first. I feel like he gets hosed pretty often in these because of the Y in the last name. So I don't want to do that. Okay. So one of the things that you were struggling with was you were saying you were struggling with the composition on this. In that, you know, you feel like these flowers are a little bit too distracting. I don't disagree with that. And I think one of the best ways that you can counter that is actually to shift your camera over a little bit. And now I'm just gonna like mock this up. And basically it would just be a matter of like, what happens if we kind of go like that? And we can maintain the same aspect ratio. But my thought is that if we cut these flowers down by, and only make them like part of the story. And then you can probably go ahead and darken them a little bit. Like, let's play them up like they're in the shadow a little bit more, maybe like a half sunlight. And then you can go from there. And I think that would definitely help you out a lot. In terms of this character, I still think, I'm wondering if, can't lift her up a little bit, and then I want to just kind of like add in some more it's like a little bit more warmth in her this way as well. Let's take that off the background there, and let's see how much that affected. So I think just by adding a little bit more warmth into her as well will definitely help out a lot. Like, I'm looking at her arm and looking at the shade of that, and I think that can really you can really get some goodness in there. But I think the flowers are looking really well. You were talking about cleaning up some of the textures. Totally reasonable. I just want to comment on how well this is looking out here. Again, like all this is a really nice haze into this. You're getting good bounce light up in there, good shaping all around here. I'm wondering if these plants could go a little bit darker. Like you can just crypto matte those and pull those down a little bit. I think this is looking really good. Yeah. And yeah, it might, yeah, if we just like, put a little more shadow in this area, allow these to go darker, because we've got the, actually we're in luck, and then you can desaturate these flowers a little bit and keep all the saturation on the flowers here in the foreground, and then maybe play up the saturation a little bit more, or like a little bit more translucent light through here, like pretend like it's wrapping around her arm a little bit. But yeah, this is looking really beautiful. And then if you could add a little bit of just like a touch of diffusion on her face, like I'm talking like 2 pixels, just because what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of light hitting her face, and then there's not a lot of like lens aberration about that, the same way we're seeing back there. And of course we don't want to go this bright and this hazy if it's on her face, but like let's just tone that back a bit. I just don't want it to be too crispy and not real, so I want to add a little bit of haze there. I think that would help out a lot. All right, Cleber, we're hopping to you now. And then we'll go back to Nigel and Kat and some others. Okay, so version 3 here, that's looking a lot better. That shaping coming around the pants is working well. That's working well. I almost want to pull a little bit of this more onto the face. Just like a little bit of that broadside fill onto the character, I think would help out a lot. Scarf looks so much better. I think you can... It depends on how much you want to play up the pink tones in that. You can warm that up just a touch to get a little bit of a pop in there. But yeah, everything else is looking pretty good. Eyes look pretty good. Maybe this is a little bit warm there. And then I guess it's just... I was looking at her hair right here and seeing if that was a bald spot of fur, but I think you're okay. But yeah, I think this looks really good. Just those minor tweaks, and I think we're good from there. Nigel, good update. Actually, let me get these together. So this is the old, this is the new. So you can see just like pulling out some of the contrast around the eyes really helps out a lot. I think that looks great. Yeah, and then pulling a little saturation out of the background too, and just creating more of a ramp on that saturation. I think that looks great. I would call this one done. I'm gonna update this in the Hall of Fame. Well, let's just call this guy done. We are good to go. All right, Kat. Okay, so 2 things about, well, let's start with this one here. So totally get that you want to add the haze in, totally fine. One thing I realized that you should ensure that you're doing is think of the haze that's coming in as only haze. Don't mix that layer with any light that's hitting the character. You want to separate those off as 2 separate elements, because you want to be able to control that haze independently of any lighting in the scene. That is just going to give you more control in the comp, a little bit more control over the look of it, where basically now you can create the best look possible for just the haze and the best look lighting for the lighting on the character. And you don't have to tie those 2 together, right? So you don't have to like make sure the lighting looks good on the character and then hope that the volumetric looks well in that position. So make sure that you separate those out. That's number 1. Number 2, and then because you can kind of see it here, I was talking about the UVs on this pole. The good thing about it just being a cylinder is you can just rotate the whole stinking thing. So if you don't want to dive into UVs yet, you just take the whole pole and just like rotate it around 180 degrees, and you should no longer see the seam. Now, for this key light, thank you very much for doing this separately. This helps out a lot. It's a little too isolated around the character. Like it's a little too perfect just for her. And the biggest problem is that I'm not seeing cast shadow from the light onto the ground, and that'll really help us evaluate the light for 1. Also, and this might just be because of the lack of cast shadow, but like the interior shadow, the self-casting shadows, like what we're seeing here, are very sharp. Not very sharp, but just like creating a lot of very small shapes that we don't want. And the reason why I say that is if we're wanting to draw like sympathy onto a character, we want to create long, smooth roll-offs. Not like, what we don't want is a bunch of little shapes, because that looks a little bit less comforting, less warm, less. It makes the character seem more villainous. Which, if that's the story we're trying to sell, great. But I think for her, she's usually she's more a hero character in this setting, I think. So it's more about softening her and getting her features to read as being lovable and kind. So that's that. Also, if this is the sunlight coming in, it feels a little bit isolated because the space actually feels a little bit open to me. Like it feels like there's probably a gap between the streets. There's probably some light coming in here, and we would see it hitting this tree back here. We'd see it hitting the barrel here, and maybe coming across. What I was thinking was that if the sunlight was coming down this way, what would happen is that if it's actually like, depending on where she's situated at, the sun would come in here and hit her, but it would actually get, but like back behind her, it would get blocked by this light, and then this stuff would fall into shadow back here. But you would still see hints of it sprinkled around the rest of the space. So I think that would be your next step from there. But great job breaking these out. I know we still got some work to do, but yeah, really cool stuff. Donika, this looks great. I'm going to update the Hall of Fame with this one, and you should be seeing it there. Cool. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. For this one, let's clarify that note a little bit. So what I meant was that when you have a door, the door, like this door jamb, lives inside of this. So it's basically like, how am I going to diagram this? So this thing, like this door is partially inside and partially outside, right? Like it goes through the wall, and the wall's built up alongside of it. So rarely will you see light seeping around the edge of the door frame as a whole. Because a door is made up of a frame like this on the outside. Which is attached to the wall. And then this is the actual door inside of that, right? Doorknob. So this, in this area, is where we're going to see light bleed. Because this is the opening. This is where there's a gap where light can escape. Where we're seeing here is light escaping from this gap where the door attaches to the house. And there's not really a gap there. Especially if we're not, like, it would be one thing if there's a ton of light coming through there, and then maybe it's just like seeping through this a little bit. But the fact that we're seeing it come out of these edges and not on this interior spot is problematic. And it feels a little off to me. So that was my note on that, and I hope that clarifies that, even though it's not my best diagram. I am, again, bouncing my daughter with my foot, so drawing while I do that isn't my best skill set. And this should answer the question of anyone who's like, hey, do I need to draw really well to get into animation? No, you do not. You can be like Mike. All right. I'm going to quit drawing that. Okay, Alfredo. So let's see, we've got these three. Let's go. We got your reference from Raya. Very, very cool. We got these three images here, and then we'll talk about, then there's Aaron too. So let's hop over into your video. So one thing about the camera move, I guess 'cause we're ramping up, it almost feels 2D, which is strange. Like it just feels like it's being scaled up. And also, like, I want to keep, like, the character goes from this part of the frame, let's go to the end, to there. So like it jumps from pretty lower middle to almost like at the bottom. So I would almost, when you're pushing in, keep the character up a little bit and really kind of push in down there. So that's step one on that. And two, from the look, let's go back in the stills just to take a look at the look. So I think that the plants actually look really good. I think there's like lots of the specular highlights in there, which is nice. It's nice to get some shaping up in here. I would like to see some more shaping on this elephant because I think that's kind of a cool piece. But inside the central area here, this is what's going to need the most work. And the biggest issue for me is that the amount of light that's hitting the character and hitting the sculpture doesn't match what we're seeing in the set. So like she's getting hit by a lot of light, right? Like just a bunch, like there's like it's like there's a big old light up above here and creating large swaths of golden brightness. And then there's these kind of like green kind of neon reflections in there. But I'm not really seeing that anywhere else. Like I guess there's a little bit in the flowers there, but it's not directional, and it's kind of feels like it's like omnipresent. So I think what we can do is isolate that down a little bit to a specific light source, because it feels like there's a light source in the middle, judging by, the fall off here and what's going on here. But like, I can't tell where at in this section it is. Like it feels like it's actually behind her. So it would almost be like rimming her up a little bit. And then we'd just see some reflections in here. Cause again, this metal component, which you've turned her into a sculpture, she's not, when she gets hit with light, there'll be some of these, but most of her illumination is caused from reflections of things being illuminated around her. So just something to keep in mind there. And then watch out for these darker components in the flowers there. You wanna create like a brighter core, because they have more transmittance in that, and you really want to read that in. Okay, last up, Aaron. Usually you go first, but sorry to push you towards the end here. Great update. Cool. I got your note on the headlights. We'll get to those later. This is looking really good. I think this is working out really well. The one area that I think that you can really continue to push, I think that you can push the key light brighter. Like if we look at the levels here, you can see that there's a little bit of peeling off the top. And if you look like down in here, these feel a little bit clamped. You can push that a little bit higher. And now, actually, let me do this way. And now what we can do is do that and compare it to the original here. Boop, 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 boop. And now that's feeling a little bit sunnier, a little brighter, a little happier. And then you can also, I would push the warmth just a touch more. And it's up to you whether you want to go more in the yellows or in the reds. I tend to favor the reds a little bit. Maybe a little less magenta. There we go. So now we've got this versus that. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I think that these plants here can go a little bit darker and allow that to fall into the foreground a little bit. And one thing, I like her skin tone here. It feels a little different than her arm. It's basically like this arm feels a little dark and a little green. So I would warm it up, especially since it's got all these warmer components around it. There'd be a little bit more warm light bouncing in there. And lastly, just watch out for I don't know what this is. There's some like purple speckles, kind of noisy speckles in here. Just watch out for that. I'm not quite sure what's causing that, but keep your eye on that. And I think you're all good. So that's it for today. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Again, I probably didn't mention this at the top. I did not. But we're doing the Foundry bundle. So if anyone wants the Nuke, Katana, Mari, and Moto license for a year for $160, let me know. And I will make sure to get you guys signed up for that. Let me know by Thursday night, because I'll probably put the order in on Friday. All right. Happy lighting, everyone. Talk to you all soon. Bye.